Welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Our guest today is Justin Beals. Justin, you ready to be great today?
I'm ready.
Justin Beals is the co-founder and CEO of StrikeGraph, a security compliance company which he incubated at Madrona Venture Labs in early 2020. As a serial entrepreneur with expertise in AI, cybersecurity, and governance, he started StrikeGraph to eliminate the confusion related to cybersecurity audit and certification process. He is also a board member of the ADA Developers Academy. He is a creator of the Training, Tracking, and Placement System U.S. patent and the author of Alignment, Curriculum, and Evidence Learning Effectiveness, which was published in iJet magazine. I know I messed that up. Justin, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to join, of course. And please don't worry about it. Like, it's semi-bizarrely technical if you're into technology and education or some of those other weird areas. Yeah.
So Justin, starting off, I want to ask you this. Well, how do you take care of yourself? Kind of like you're doing a lot, mental health's a big thing, health's the big thing. Like, how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the first things is, and I didn't do this as well today as I did when I didn't do this as well when I was younger as today, but like listening first, like, where am I? Am I in a danger zone from a mental health perspective? Am I feeling confident? Is it highly variable? Am I all over the place? Is it stable? And I think you got to like carve out space, in your day, whatever it is, whether it's the exercise that you do or, something where you can listen to what's going on in your head and how you're feeling a little bit. It's easy for the outside context to redefine your own self-perception, right? Certainly, like, if I'm not in a great place and exercise is important, my favorite form is a yoga practice I've had for many years now. And sometimes I'm not doing good about waking up in the morning and getting it done. And sometimes I'm doing better. And then I think another thing is just actually to re-engage my brain into something that's really engrossing, but is not my work or not something that's high stress or the same thing all the time. For me personally, actually, I really enjoy sailing. We both live in the Greater Puget Sound area, and so there's a ton of just amazing places to visit on a sailboat out here. Yeah.
How often do you go sailing?
Things have been busy at work, so I'm not keeping up with it as good as I should have. But when I'm really engaged with it, I'll do a race once a month all year long. But then the prime racing season for us is, and the wind's really blowing out there today, will be, March, April, May, June. By the time July and August set in, there's not much racing to be done. The wind kind of dies down and we get those bright, big sunshiny days. And so then me and my wife go cruising around the San Juan Islands and up into Canada. Yeah.
How long have you been sailing?
Not too long. I mean, I meet a lot of people here that grew up, racing at the local yacht club. Different here, right? The local yacht clubs are a little more family oriented. They're not like the hoity-toity New York thing, a friend of mine, when I sold my first company, a friend of mine invited me and my wife on a cruise in the BVI, where we hired a skipper to take the boat for us. And I had an epic week. I also was in a mental place where I was shifting gears from being an owner to selling my business to understanding what this new role was for me. And it had a big impression on me. My wife really enjoyed it, but I'm kind of type A, and I was like, I want to do this again, but I want to be the skipper.
Yeah.
So I took the classes, and it's a whole,
How long does it take to learn how to sail?
Well, in just a day, you can pick up on the basics, and there's great early classes. I think that the American Sailing Association calls it their 101 class, and it's like a Friday afternoon, a Saturday, and a Sunday. And you'll go out in a small boat and learn to drive the boat around. If you want to get to the place where you can rent a sailboat and take it out for like a week, like in the British Virgin Islands, you usually tend to have to do a 1 week onboard class where you learn that. And so that I took about a year between the first class and that class. And you don't have to take, in Washington, you have to have a small license to be a boater here, but you don't really have to do anything to buy a boat. So if you got the money and you want to get out there and run it into something, you can do it whenever you're ready.
So what keeps someone from like getting a sailboat and just like sailing off in the Pacific Ocean, right? Is there rules against that or something? Or like, of course, it's not the safest thing you do, of course, but like, what is it like? I got a lot of money. I want to do a sailboat to sail somewhere, right?
No rules whatsoever.
Okay.
Like if that's what you want to do and you've got the money to do it, you can put your life on the line and go out there and do it.
Okay.
Now it is incredibly dangerous, and it has been the toughest thing. I think that's why I've enjoyed it for so long. There is constantly something new for me to learn in it, whether it's weather, whether it's understanding the sea state and currents, whether it's understanding the equipment and how to keep track of it and help it work well. If it's learning how to deal with a crew, which is always changing, right? And like what their needs are and how to be good at what we're doing. So that's what I mean by that engrossing, mental thing. Especially when we're racing, you have to be 100% engaged with that activity. There's just no space to do something else. And that gets your brain unplugged from what's going on at work or something else.
So what's either a two-part question? What's the farthest you've gone out and how many days consecutive have you gone out?
Yeah. So our longest race, and that's probably how I like measure my achievement in it, is I really enjoy near shore distance racing. And so we have a race called the Swiftsure race. It runs out of Victoria, Canada on the very south end of Vancouver Island and goes all the way out the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Into the Pacific Ocean. They anchor a big Canadian naval vessel out there. That's where you turn around and then come back. And so we can be out on that race straight, no stops for 40 hours. So we'll start in the morning, go all night, go the next day, and get back into Victoria that late evening. That's the longest I've been able to skipper. There is another one I've done that goes around Vancouver Island, and I was a crew member on that one. It wasn't my vessel. And I did the offshore leg. So that means we go outside of the north end of Vancouver Island, out in the Pacific Ocean, all the way down to Victoria. That is amazing, beautiful, and just hard work, but worth it.
So I'm guessing sailboats aren't cheap, right? So I'm guessing you buy a sailboat once and keep it as long as you can.
Yeah, especially during the pandemic, it was wild. People say when you get a boat, that your best days on the boat are the day you get it and the day you sell it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that during the pandemic, everybody's looking for, something to enjoy outside. And so it was actually really hard to buy a boat. I had people come by. I have a 40-foot Grand Soleil, and we'd have people come by and just offer us money for it. But I wouldn't do it because I wasn't going to be able to get another one. And I had plans for adventures that I wanted to do. And so I think this will be the second large vessel that I've owned. I've had lots of kayaks and canoes over the years. So this one we really love. Hang on to it for as long as I can. I don't really see a big need to switch it out. And it's incredible equipment, right? Because I can have fun going out for an afternoon with some friends and bouncing around Guemi's Island, or we can, you could sail it to Japan if you wanted to from here. So it's a great piece of equipment. Yeah.
And you keep it at your house, or is like a dock you keep it at?
Yeah, we keep it at a dock. So, I live in the greater Seattle area. Where I live is LaConner, Washington, which is a tiny little town, very close to Anacortes, which is that's the ferry docks to go over to the San Juan Islands. And so we keep the sailboat over at Cap Sante Marina in Anacortes, and I'm a member of the Anacortes Yacht Club, which is a great community to learn about sailing or join in. And so we participate out there. Yeah.
Is there anything else you do for fun, or sailing is like your number one hobby, so to speak?
That's the one that definitely takes up the most money. Probably the second thing that, and I have a lot of hobbies, but the second thing I probably spend the most amount of time on is skateboarding.
Okay.
Yeah, and I skated when I was a little kid, and
because you haven't outgrown it yet.
I have not yet, but I think I probably should. It's harder to get up, and
easy to break bones.
That's right. Yeah, but there's just something really magical about it. I'm not much of a street skater. I grew up skating pools and like half pipes and stuff. Tony Hawk was just inventing a lot of stuff when I was a kid. And so what we call transition, where you got this, that shift from a vertical to a flat plane, it's a little more gentle on you because you can scrub off speed as you take a fall or something. But we have a great little skate park in LaConner, and I go out there at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a month, and get some turns in. Yeah.
Also, isn't it crazy like how people can make money off anything? Like back in the day, like Tony Hawk, I think Rob Skeeter, whatever his name is, all these skateboarders, like, kid, get off my lawn, you know what you're doing. And then they're like multi-billion-dollar industries by themselves, right?
Yeah.
Just from doing a skateboard. Like, who would ever thought, right?
Sometimes you really do got to lean into your passion in a way, right? And also what you're good at.
Yeah.
I think
That's passion plus good is the way to go.
It really helps you get there, doesn't it? You know, I was never good enough at skateboard to be a pro, but I definitely have noticed some interesting business stories. Like there's a great company called Welcome Skateboards, and they're generally around the PNW area. And it was a tech guy that sold a company and wanted to start, didn't see that some of the old school bigger skateboards that we used to have, and built his own special company. And Welcome, just almost as a brand philosophy, is just brilliant. You know, it's very open-minded about skateboarding. It invites all to come and join. It's creative. And so like I see these brands and the graphics works they're doing. And so even today, there's incredible new inventions coming from that sport. Yeah.
Yeah. I think with skateboarding, like you see like little kids doing it, males, females, all ages, right? Everyone can enjoy it. So I think always cool about it.
Absolutely. And man, that's what I always wanted as a kid. And it wasn't always like that. I mean, let's be fair. You know,
not skateboard here.
Right. Or even within the community. I mean, if you take a bunch of outcasts and you throw them together, sometimes they don't treat each other well, you know, because they've suffered some trauma on their own. And so when I was a kid and first skateboarding, there certainly were some cliques, and you know, you weren't man enough might have been a comment. But today I go to the skate park and you're right, it's like multi-generational, and it's all different types of colors, and you know, it's all different types of backgrounds. And that's what I always wanted, and I always celebrate it. And you know, I invite anyone, regardless of your age, your background, to come to the skate park and learn. Just ask somebody, you know, and if they're a jerk, let me know.
And maybe wear some extra padding in your clothes.
That's right. Yeah.
As you first starting out.
Yeah.
Because it hurts. I don't care if you follow concrete, walls, dirt, it hurts. And
it is not, it's not any other kind of sport in a way. You know, I know we have competitions, but most skateboarders that have done it for a while generally reject the concept that skateboarding is a competition. For me, it's a deeply personal expression. You know, it is creative. It's a form of art. And I don't care if you can't ollie or you can. I don't care if you just ride hills. You know, it's you, and I'm going to celebrate your expression. And my form of skateboarding is, I hope, a little different than everyone else's, and I'm contributing back to that art form in a way.
Yes. So moving on, you did an article, I think it was on LinkedIn, where you wrote about, so the federal government have a national cybersecurity standard. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, you know, I think that we have seen a lot of mistrust in the marketplace between sharing data between companies for good reason. One of the things that I've learned in the last 5 years, especially in researching to start StrikeGraph, is about 70% of major data breaches were coming from third-party vendors. And, you know, we can think of things like SolarWinds, you know, that was a third-party vendor data breach that was really difficult for a lot of Microsoft customers in the Microsoft ecosystem. And so they're already put in place these self-policing measures. You know, sometimes industry responds more quickly than the government will. And so in the industry itself, you know, buyers are, if they're sharing data, they're asking for their vendors to get these security certifications or audit accomplished from an independent tester. And I think that we're going to see the government, you know, once business starts going that way, you'll see the government start going that way as well. Even beyond just like privacy, like we see GDPR in Europe or California consumer privacy. And there has been a lot of talk from the FEC, and then there was interesting comments from the federal government that they're interested in creating a required standard for businesses to operate from a security perspective.
So if there's this national federal government standard, I don't see how they make that fair for big business and small business, right? Because big business, all the resources, and you got a small business. I don't see how that can work, or will it work?
Yeah, I think that's really fair fear. Like it can go really awry. we work with a lot of standards these days, and one of the things that I think has been really innovative is that we made these standards something that very small companies, 5-person AI startups that are driving at, SOC 2 or ISO 27001 and achieving that audit. But then we have large customers, 10,000 employees plus, that are driving at very similar standards. And so there's two things I think to understand about how these standards work in a way. One is that think about it more like a rubric and less like a strict, like you must do this. It's more like they're going to ask, like, how do you keep data private? They're not going to say, we require you to encrypt all data at this level of encryption. They don't go that way for a very specific reason. And that way, a small business may say, hey, the way we keep data private is a lot different based upon the risk profile of our business than another company would, a bigger company. So that's helpful, right? Like we can meet the rubric without it being too onerous if we design the standard well. The second thing that's really important to know is that parts of these standards apply to certain businesses and don't to others. And it's very common to go into audit and be like, hey, you know what? This portion of the standard doesn't apply to me because I'm this type of business. And then usually the person that's doing the testing will just double check that and be like, yeah, you're right. We have organizations like law firms, for example. They're not pushing production code. That's not what they do. So there are parts of the standards, though, that they're going after that apply to like change management and production patching that they don't have to put in place any security activities for. And that's okay, right? So I do think that if you design them, they can be flexibly applied. And of course, the authors of these standards, it's important that they take that into mind as they're writing the standard itself.
Who does these audits?
It really depends on the standard itself. So for things like SOC 2, that's a very common one in North America, and it's like a general business security standard. The way it is written by the AICPA is that the final assurance needs to be performed by a certified public accounting firm or an independent certified public accountant. So just an individual CPA must perform the final assurance. And if you think about what they're setting up there, like this is a lot like financial audits. When someone does a financial audit, they're like, I tested this much data in your financial audit, because they won't test everything. They just can't go through every transaction. And they'll say, based upon the amount of data I tested and the result of that testing, I can make a statistical assumption about the rest of the data. That's a very similar function, for these like SOC 2 type audits. The way we think about it is what really needs to happen for the testing is a cybersecurity expert generally needs to do the testing. And then a CPA can review or reperform the testing to ensure that it meets the assurance on the testing itself. And so that's SOC 2, right? That's very specific for that standard. Like HIPAA, it doesn't have any sort of testing standards. And we're launching our HIPAA certification product very soon. What we do in that instance is that we do all the testing and we perform the report so that you have like a sales asset to be like, hey, StrikeGraph tested us against, hit the HIPAA standard and found us to be compliant, with the requirements, but we don't have to go to a CPA and get them to review that work. Yeah.
The audits, is it like a grading scale? Is it pass fail? How's that work?
Yeah, what they'll do is they'll have a list of, I can't remember the number, but it's somewhere between like 60 or 100 different line items of what the rubric is testing against. And essentially it'll either be a pass on each of those line items, or they'll find what they call an exception. And they'll say, okay, so for, you getting passwords to match your password policy, we found an exception when we reviewed the data. And so in your report, it would state an exception is in there. Very rarely do you get an exception unless you're kind of just not watching what's going on, or our tool is meant to ensure that you're ready to go into testing. Because you're just well aware if something's going to fail beforehand. So you just need to make sure and review before you go into the testing.
So let's suppose a company does fail or get exceptions. Do they get a retest, have to go through training? What's the repercussions of that?
Yeah. So one thing they can do is they can be like, yeah, we don't care. And so they could just share the report with the exception. Now, the risk you run at the end of the day is that a buyer might be like, oh, this exception worries me and I'm not gonna buy your product, if you don't fix it. So you could do that, but you can also just go in and get retested if you want. Some of the audits are like a historical perspective. So let's say you're looking back over the last year, like a financial audit, and they find that exception. Before you get retested, you need to let some period of time, usually a minimum of 3 months pass, so that you've recollected that operational data that you were doing the good security, and then you can test, because you can't necessarily fix a historical issue that you failed at. Yeah.
Let's say a small business that's starting off like 5 to 10 employees. Or two-part question. When should they bring on their own security person to do this? Or is it better for them bring on a company like yours, outsource it?
Yeah. So at a 10-person company, I think it's better to bring in somebody from the outside, because a cybersecurity expert, or, the typical term is,
I'm sure they're not cheap.
They're not cheap at all. Like a CISO, is chief information security officer, is very expensive, but even like a security engineer or a security analyst isn't cheap as well. And if they don't have that mentorship, they might not be prepared to really kind of give that umbrella perspective on things. You have a couple different options in the marketplace. There are some organizations that provide what they call a virtual CISO, which is kind of like a part-time CISO to just kind of help provide leadership. We do like similar things for part-time HR support or something like that, where you can kind of share a resource between multiple companies. Or you can utilize a system like StrikeGraph. One of the things that I really wanted to do for StrikeGraph, because as a CTO, I always work to get good security implemented, but I wasn't a security expert. And so that, that's a little dangerous. I know we need to encrypt data, but have we encrypted it well, or have we put good processes in place according to the latest standards? I didn't know that. And so that's what our product, a lot of times, is meant to do, is allow that 10-person company to design the security posture that matches their business only by knowing their business. Yeah. And so certainly I think these solutions and like StrikeGraph are really helping. We think about it like access to good security information. We want to broaden that access so more people can implement good security with less resources.
Yes. So go into more detail about your company in a minute. But how do you recommend a small business owner or any owner, period, regardless of industry or size, to pick the right company for them? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, I think you probably want to look for somebody that understands what resources you have. I would be sensitive to, a platform or a service that is going to ask a lot of time of your team, because maybe they want to do, maybe they're used to working with Fortune 50 companies, and you're a small company, and they're going to make it almost too onerous in a way, because they're used to working with as much larger organizations. Similarly, I think I'd recommend somebody that kind of understands your product space and data. That's really critical. It's the data here that is driving the number one risk. And so if you're reaching out to a virtual CISO type organization to just get some consulting a little bit, make sure that they've done a project or two in enterprise SaaS, if that's what you do, or healthcare information, if that's what you do. And just think about that data that you're going to use. And that's where the risk comes in a lot of the times.
So next, you also did, I think you did also called and I like this, security compliance, why is a business accelerator?
Yeah.
So most people think about what you're doing, like spending money. You made the case where no, it's actually making you money. Can you go into detail about that?
Yeah, I think it's a huge shift, by the way, right? This change from 5 years ago. My first professional tech job that I was paid for, I was a security engineer for British Telecom. And so this was 96, 97. And right off the bat, one of the things they taught me when I joined the team was well, you spend enough money on security if you weren't hacked, right? that was the litmus test. I was like, wow, that's scary, right? And so today, I think that what has shifted is that we don't have to like be so squishy about what good security is or is not. The standard helps. It's a huge benefit to these companies to be like, oh, there's a defined bar that I can kind of pick, and there are lots of standards out there, so you can pick one that fits you a little bit and go after that. And that's just much better. Look, we use standards for all kinds of things that are really important. Like, we don't write code without a standard framework for how that code gets put together. Because otherwise, even with a language definition, like, oh, we're going to use JavaScript, it would be an utter mess if we didn't know where this file was or how this function is defined. And so these are just really like important structures to help you meet an expectation and understand how you're doing. So that's incredibly innovative, I think, in the security space, and really, really helpful. All standards have issues, that none are perfect, and we can complain, and we're constantly trying to build better ones. And I think that's really good. But man, it's so much better than just wondering if you did the right thing.
Yeah. So there's no federal standard. Does that mean that each state has its own standard, or is it each city has its own standard?
Some of it is like industry specific. So one thing we could say is that like HIPAA is a federal standard in a way, like it's federal law. So that exists. Then you could look at a state like California. It has California.
It's a whole different country.
That's right. The California Consumer Privacy Standard. No other states that I've heard of have written their own special standard. Okay. And then secondly, we have like industry policing where buyers are saying, hey, I want SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or one of these other standards before I'll do business with you. So those are the three main areas where you'll see this come in. But I think, or PCI DSS is a good one, right? Where the industry has said, hey, this is our standard for credit card processors. I think we're going to see the federal government, and especially the FEC, has levied higher fines against companies with serious data breaches where they had no defined security practice inside. So I think we'll see more and more of that come up.
So these companies, multi-state offices, like what standard do they follow? The higher standard, or just one standard, or?
So there is for buyers in government, there are a couple standards that crop up. One that we hear for the federal government is called FedRAMP, and it's a subset of the NIST 800 compliance standard. It's just a list of those. One thing these are complicated areas, and I've spent a lot of time trying to learn about what each of these are designed for. So NIST stands for National Institute of Science and Technology. And so the National Institute of Science and Technology did publish a really large spreadsheet of recommended security practices called the NIST Computing Science Framework, or CSF. But that standard alone, it has everything from how to specify password lengths all the way through to what to do with classified top secret information. And there's no company that's going to do all of it. Right. So we also see some states building what they call state ramp, which is pretty much the same as FedRAMP, but slightly different, that they'll put out there. And so state governments are starting to do that a little bit. And there's just a whole patchwork of these little things, but mostly it's, the buyers are saying, the federal government is saying, hey, we need you to be FedRAMP audited, to do business with you. For the Department of Defense, it's called the CMMC standard. It is a subset of the NIST standard. And so that's theirs. And they have different levels. They have level 1 through 3. And depending on the level, there's a different set of rigor in the testing process. And so it is a little bit of a patchwork, but there's no, all businesses should do such with data within the US government, kind of like HIPAA says, if you don't take care of healthcare information, that healthcare data, you're liable for it. You can be sued, essentially. Yeah. So
I know if you're a software developer, you got to keep track of everything, all the changes, everything is updated or whatever on a daily basis. It's the same with what you're doing. Is things constantly changing, chance to get updated?
We see, I'd say every quarter, we see 2 or 3 shifts go on. So like this quarter, the ISO governing body launched a new version of the ISO 27001 standard. So it's 27001 2022 is what they call it. We just uploaded it into our system. And we're also seeing a new standard that just got released that we're launching a platform called TISAX, TISAX, and that's for automotive suppliers. So a lot of the automotive brands like BMW or Volkswagen, they've decided together that they want a special security standard for all of their suppliers. And so now that's kind of sweeping that whole marketplace in a way. And I'd say every quarter there's 2 or 3 changes that are happening. And we just constantly keep them updated in our platform so that people are kind of aware of what's going on. It's slower than you'd think, right? Like these governing bodies aren't super fast, which is good. Yeah.
So would you say it's easier to be a CISO in the private industry or the government? Let me retract. Would you rather go from government to private or private to government?
Ooh, I think the pay cut going to the government is really hard. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. Yeah.
I have some really dear friends and family members that work for the Department of Defense in the security space, some of them. And I think the way it tracks out more is like they love what they do. They care passionately about the work they do in the country and keeping people safe for what they do. I don't know the details for good reason. They don't tell me, but I think someday the private sector would look forward to them making a contribution, and certainly they would pay quite a bit for all that amazing experience they've had. Yeah.
Yes. So you have experience in the tech startup scene in Seattle and other locations, correct?
Yeah.
Can you do a quick comparison, like how you feel about each one? Like I don't want to say one's better, like the pros and cons of all these places you've been at.
Yeah, for sure. So if you can't tell from my Southern accent, I'm from Atlanta. That's where I grew up. I finished college in 95. I was already a programmer. I programmed since I was a little kid. I was always really curious about computers. And I got my first job at British Telecom that paid really well. But pretty quickly I was like, man, I want to like build a company that has a better culture, a culture where people that are different, like all those different skateboarders coming to the skate park can like come together and just feel welcome no matter who they are or what background they come from. And so Atlanta, though, is a very conservative business environment, right? And they're like, I'm not giving you my money to build your company. So I had to be really judicious about the types of businesses that I could build. And so the first early businesses that I built were services companies, I had the first one to actually make some good money and have some good growth was a company called Roundbox Global. And I started it in 2000, founded it, and it was a consulting company, and we specialized in education technology. And there was a lot of innovation happening in that space between 2000 to 2010. I actually sold that business in 2009. I grew it to about 130 consultants. Now, speaking of like geography, one of the things that we did that I'm over the moon about the experience that I've had, and it's a big passion for me today and has really widened my brain to the world, was I had set up software development centers in Costa Rica and Chile. And so I did a ton of work in Central America and South America and have amazing friends there, and just doing business in these different geographies. And we go to like Costa Rica and be like, well, we'd be looking at the computer science grads and be like, their options were like working at a bank or coming and working with us. And we'd be like, yeah, well, we got like PlayStation for lunch. And they'd be like, oh, I'm down with Justin. Yeah, we're going to go do that. Yeah. After that, I sold that business in 2009. I really wanted to kind of give my wife an opportunity to actually dictate where we went, because my career had been pushing us.
Is she also from Atlanta?
Yeah, she is. We both grew up there, met at the goth club. It's a classic 80s, late 90s love story. Yeah. She was like, man, I watched Fame. She said, I watched Fame as a young girl, and I always wanted to move to New York. And I was like, we're moving to Manhattan. We're on it, And so I moved to Manhattan for 2 years and lived in Greenwich Village, worked for Macmillan Publishing, and loved the city. Basically it's about anything you want to find, any subculture, any group, any interest you have. Manhattan kind of has it, or the broader New York. Like I get on the subway on Sunday mornings and ride out to Rockaway Beach and go surfing. And that's crazy, for me to like ride the subway to the break, And so I thought that was so cool. I had a little sailboat out there, so we did a lot of sailing, and it was amazing. Moved back to Atlanta after that for a while, a couple years, and worked in Silicon Valley some for a startup out there called Hot Chalk. We built that to about 300 million in revenue, big education tech provider. They sold that. I moved back to Atlanta for a little while, and then I got invited by a friend to come to Seattle and work. And that's what brought me out here about 6 years ago or so. And I really enjoy the Pacific Northwest. I enjoy the business culture. We have a lot of friends here and love the adventure. Yeah.
So you said like your previous startups were like ed tech. This one is not ed tech.
This is not ed tech.
Yeah. So why the switch?
Yeah. I got really frustrated with the general ethics of the education system in general. A lot of people that work in the education space are very passionate about it. And I am too. I still am very passionate about good success. But actually, the education system failed me in a lot of ways. I don't think that I was given the opportunity for me as an individual to really fit in with the machine. I was a straight C student, right? And my degree's in theater, not computer science, because it just seemed so dull and boring and agonizing to go sit in those computer science classes. I wanted to create, that's why I was interested in programming. And so I worked in education for a long time, and I wanted to really build innovative software that helped people learn in unique ways. But the problem is the broader marketplace just refuses to change, and so you're selling like an innovative piece of software, or you're asking a school to like lean in and improve how they're doing, and they don't even want to think about it. And I don't work in that space, so I'll be a little critical of it. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, their endowments are big enough that no one needs to be charged a tuition, not a single person. They make more off the interest on those endowments than they can spend in a year. What are they doing? Really? Why are they, setting these poor kids up for hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and making it so hard to get into that, other people can't try? I was just floored. I had an amazing opportunity to listen to a talk by Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State University. That's an organization that's doing really innovative things. Arizona State University has put their first 4 freshman courses up online for free. And if you take those courses and do well in them, you get accepted. They don't care if you took the SAT. They don't care if you took the GRE. They're like, you're proving to us that you have the capability to succeed here by doing it, and we're going to give you the opportunity to keep going. And they don't believe that education should be sold like Ferraris. The making it hard for people to get something, especially schooling and education, is just not the ethics that should drive that industry.
Yeah, and definitely not defending Harvard at all. At Harvard targets too much money, bunch of money, but at least you get something. You got a Harvard degree, right?
Right.
What about these schools like North Dakota Institute Technical Bullshit University?
Yeah,
charges about the same amount of money, right?
Right.
Or like you go to like some liberal arts school, $30,000 a year. You got a degree in nothing.
Yeah,
$120,000 in debt. Doesn't make any sense. It
doesn't make any sense. And I'll give a shout out to my college in Durango, Colorado, Fort Lewis College. Their current president is doing some really innovative things there. And that school has a charter to allow indigenous peoples and Native Americans from tribe members to go to school for free. And so 30% of the student body comes from a reservation. And, one of my classes in college was Navajo rug weaving. Amazing art form, right? But I had no idea. And they gave me the opportunity to learn about this amazing culture and surround myself in the Southwest and the Four Corners area and learn from really great people. And so I just think that there is a vibrant set of education outcomes. I think I was frustrated in the education marketplace that so little is done so little effort and money is spent on helping students that, and I couldn't get products into the hands of students. So one of the things that I promised myself when I built StrikeGraph is that I want to build a really ethical product. And I think that the reason I've been frustrated with the products that I've been developing is that I can't sell it to the person that gets the value out of it, right? Like there's a professor in between me and the student that's deciding which textbook to adopt. There's a state government that is deciding which products they're going to buy or not buy. The only K-12 products that I saw be very successful, the company didn't have a single salesperson. They had lobbyists, and they go to the state government and they lobby the state government to get it put on the state budget and bring it in. And just as I saw this play out over a decade and a half, I was like, I'm participating, and I'm really not happy. And so one of the things I say about StrikeGraph is that our customers directly get the value out of our product. And like that fundamental decision and the ethics of it really matter to me. So I kind of promised myself I wouldn't do another education startup when I was getting ready for this one. And I'm sure I'm still passionate about it. I want to say that there are millions of people in the education industry that care deeply about these challenges and want to solve them. And I champion them as being working in a hard space. And really, a lot of the leaders need to just open up their hearts
or move on.
Absolutely. And just recognize, right? Like, please be a part of the solution. You cannot wait for a whole nother generation of kids to get out of school without, the appropriate skill set. We just cannot wait. There is no time to waste.
That's something I give this generation of kids credit for. Like when I was growing up, you're like, you had to go to college, don't go to public, don't go to trade school, go to college, whatever.
Yeah.
Now kids are like, man, do I really need college? Like they say they want to be successful without college. They see it's like rip off, so
yeah,
I get that plus. So on the same subject, from your point of view, what should be the what's the word we're looking for? What's the object of school or college? What should college be like? Teaching you how to think, sit for a grade or a job? What should college be doing for students?
Yeah, and I might juxtapose it from the way it was, right? Like I think the way it was for you and me is grade school, college was about getting you to fit into the boxes that you need.
Yeah, be the part of the matrix.
That's right. Yeah.
Get that 9-to-5 job and pay Uncle Sam his federal tax money.
That's right. And if you didn't fit in that box, then you weren't going to be very successful in those organizations. And sadly, you'd wind up, not, I would just want to say that like, there's a lot of creativity in welding. There's a lot of creativity in mechanics. There's a lot of creativity in the trades very broadly. And I celebrate that. And those that are really interested in doing that in agriculture, that type of stuff. But if you didn't fit into that box, they just felt like you weren't, you were judged as being not capable of making an important contribution to society. So I think what it should be, what I think it should be today is about giving kids all the way through college, young adults, the opportunity and space to invent and create. Now, I watched my nephew, we've been playing Minecraft a little bit, and I jumped on there on Minecraft with him, and he was showing me some of the stuff he created in some of the worlds, and I was like, these are like crazy 3D programming languages, right? Like he's trying to auto spawn weird characters to turn them into weird.
And you're like, I know you didn't learn that in school.
I know, yeah. So I was like, how did you learn all this? Oh, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and
the University of YouTube.
I know he was a deep expert. And so Michael Crow, the president of ASU, was talking about this just a couple of weeks ago. He says that ability to be autodidactic, to self-learn, is incredibly powerful. And I think we should be teaching kids to lean into their passions and learn about them so they get that muscle, right? So I think teaching is, one, being able to consume information well. There was a great article in the New York Times in the past 2 weeks about teaching phonics so that kids are better readers. Like that seems like an important grade school skill set. You need to fundamentally learn how to consume new information so that you can keep learning. And I think when you get to college, you should be building a company. Like you should roll out of college, with a company, whether it's just you as a sole business owner that wants to start a retail shop in fashion, or like me that, I should have been building a product or a consulting company or something along those lines the whole time I was in college. And I think that's where it's got to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the Seattle tech startup scene. How long have you been in Seattle?
Yeah, I think it's about 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you've been here, what have you seen as some pros and cons of the Seattle tech startup scene, to include the investment community, startups, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I have really enjoyed building companies here, a lot, and the community has been really exceptional. One thing I'll say about Seattle is that I feel like Seattle is really good about like feet on the ground, head in the clouds. When we think about business and invention and what can be done. Atlanta was too conservative. It was really hard to find capital to build a business. So you couldn't get your head in the clouds very much, right? You're constantly dealing with a lot of gravity. Silicon Valley is like untethered from reality a lot of times. And I really struggle with some of the assumptions that they make about economics.
What? Your idea is to build a space accelerator the moon? Here's $10 million.
I know, it's crazy, right? And so I really like that about the community. So I came here originally to work with a startup called Koru, and it was a great couple of co-founders that are deep friends of mine now. I was their CTO. And so that was a lot of fun. We built a good company. It was focused on human capital management. We did a lot of AI work in the space, which was really interesting. After that, there's 2 incubators in the area that I've had a chance to work with that I'm a huge fan of. I did a little work with Pioneer Square Labs. They're just around the corner from here in the studio. Great team there, and they built some great companies. And then StrikeGraph, I incubated it at Madrona Venture Labs, just a couple blocks away as well. Incredibly talented mentors and leaders that helped me make the transition from like a CEO to a venture capital backed CEO, which is a whole different set of knowledge, especially the mathematics around how these organizations are set up. Yeah.
So what makes a great CTO?
Yeah. I think a really great CTO, first off, has to know, has to understand like how software is built in a way, or whatever the engineering is, right? Like, I've always liked this concept of like the CEO at a train company, was a railroad engineer first, right? Like they worked their way up through the jobs, or they tried out a lot of jobs inside that company. So one thing a good CTO will do is that they will have been a programmer for a while. They might have been a product manager for a while. They might have been in QA for a while, right? Like testing. But they'll have just to understand the components that go into kind of bringing together an organization to deliver whatever the solution is, that the vision of the change they want to see in their world. The second thing a CTO has to be really good at is they need to be really good at working with people. It is 80% getting the most out of the team and 10%, brilliant engineer, really. So I like to say that when I was a CTO, like what we do is a team sport. Absolutely. And so I think that it's a danger if you have a CTO that's like a rock star engineer that doesn't understand how to engage the rest of the team for the greatest output or velocity. That's really important. And also the CTO, I think one thing you need to bring to it is kind of an understanding of risks, and being able to have a little foresight of like security perspective, like what are some of our risks from a security perspective, how to handle tech debt, like if we make this decision, it's going to impact a later decision that we might want to make. Maybe it's worth it for us to invest something in this up front instead of later. Things like that. So that's what I've tried to bring as a CTO. I'll say, when I was the CTO last, I would tell my executive team, I was like, look, I'm not the best programmer anymore. Like programming is almost like being a monk. You need to like do it like day in, day out for 4 to 6 months, and then you kind of have this velocity of how to write code and get it into the system in the right way. But I'm really good at bringing a great team together and getting the most out of them that we can, and also have them feeling really wonderful about their job, not like we just crunch time to the whole thing forever. And I said, and I'm also really good about envisioning what technology can do and be. So I can see a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, what we could build and the type of team it would take to go and build that.
So as a CTO, what was your process as far as like, building a great team members, mentoring them, making sure you pick the right developers, because I know right now junior developers are having a hell of a time finding jobs, right? It's not easy.
Yeah. And I think this is one area that I think a lot of CTOs could grow. It's like they come in and they'll be like, I want to hire a lot of senior engineers. I don't think that's right, actually. What I did and what I specialized in, and I had to do this because my early companies were bootstrapped. And so I couldn't afford just a bunch of super high-end engineers. So I focused on hiring junior engineers almost exclusively and really ramping them up to like a mid-level engineer in just a year and a half, like quite quickly. And a lot of that is like that education thing, right? Like don't sit like a sage on the stage and tell them what they need to memorize, but give them the opportunity to learn how to do it. And so if you're going to bring in that kind of raw talent, you're not looking for the greatest engineering capacity or, the right degree in computer science. You're looking for someone that has a passion for the work, and then a willingness to fail and learn and do better. And then finally, someone, that is a great teammate that will collaborate well with the others, because they're not going to be able to grow kind of on their own. You need to grow together a team. And I've had a lot of success, building really high-end enterprise software with not the team you would imagine building it.
So that's all fine and dandy. And you have a tech background. You're pretty good at tech people, right? What if someone's a non-tech founder? How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think if you're a non-tech founder, I might recommend one of the things that we look for sometimes is we'll bring in a vendor that does this really well. And so this might be an outsourced team. One of the things that an outsourced team is supposed to be really good at is they're supposed to be good at managing talent in that way, right? Like locating talent, hiring them, and giving them an environment to be successful, and maybe coaching you on how to get the most out of them. So if you're a non-tech founder, I've of course had a lot of success in Central America, looking for services businesses that might be 50 to 100 engineers. So they kind of have that capacity to surround young engineers or their new engineers with some guidance and mentorship, and then having them help me build the product. Now you need to interview them like you're interviewing to hire somebody, because whatever their culture is going to kind of infect your culture in a way, and back and forth. So just be sensitive to, right, like, is this the right group with us? Do they value, are we lined up from a value perspective? Like, my value is that people are happy at work. Okay, great. So don't look for a services business that's just like rolling through people one after the other really quickly and not treating them well, and only focused on billable hours, or they make sure that team gets their holidays when they're supposed to, or stuff like that.
Let's say you're not tech founder, you have a business idea, you got some, you validate your idea, whatever. Would it be worthwhile for you to learn to code the product yourself, at least the MVP yourself, and take the extra time? Like maybe if you hire the outsourced vendors, you get an MVP in 6 months.
Right.
But if you learn to code yourself, it might take a year and a half. Mm-hmm. But would it be worth that extra time, you think?
I think it depends on what the market's doing around you. This is not an engineering thing, but the product had to be engineered in a way that the story of the woman that started the Spanx product.
Yeah, that's a great story.
She spent like 5 years testing out different nylons and fabrics and seeing what worked. And
people forget that story about her. They think, oh, she's like this multi-billion-dollar lady.
Yeah.
Like, no, she took like freaking 5 years, she like grinded it out.
That's right. And she had to learn a lot about the industry and manufacturing and what types of fabric worked before. And she was very secret about all she was doing, right? She didn't want anyone else to know. And so she was quiet and did it. And then when she was ready to launch, she had basically written the code, for the product. So I think that's one thing you have to ask yourself, right? Like if this market is happening now and everybody knows it, like let's say it's an AI thing and it's, you and 3 other people are going to hit the market here pretty soon, you may need to go find some funding and hire a team to get that out as soon as possible. But if no one sees the world quite the same way you do, and it's very unique, you might save yourself a lot of grief and own more of the company at the end of the day by taking the time to learn how to write that app that you have a vision for doing on a mobile device. So that's the kind of the way I do the calculus. I had a friend that was wanting to write a series of children's books, and he was like, should I just, I have this idea and I could get some money, to be able to go write them, but it's going to take a bunch of the company. And I was like, well, are you going to be able to go any faster with that money other than just like doing it right now and then be able to own more? And he's like, no, not really. Like, sounds to me like you want to just write the story, like get the product as far down the line as you can before you bring in that outside money. And that way you can be like, hey, I'm only selling 20% of the company, not 80% of the company.
So how did being a CTO sort of like train you to be a CEO?
Yeah. I mean, it's similar like management stuff, right? And I think that's part of it. There was a lot I want to say that I'm not sure it was the best training, right? There were a lot of hard lessons on the other side. When I was the CEO of Roundbox, our services business, I bootstrapped that. I never took on funding. I just grew it off of our profits year over year. And so in some ways, I had to learn like business things, but real common sense business things, right? Like profit matters, and you
probably need to know how to do P&L.
That's right. Like, oh, what's this P&L thing? Like, or how to think about like cost. You're right, costs or hiring plans or growing too fast or growing too slow. Also, how to like deal with the legal process of an agreement, the inevitable HR issue, and how to handle that. So I think I learned a lot of those lessons, but what I didn't have to do in that instance, because I was a sole owner, is I didn't have to really deal with a board. I didn't have to deal with investors or capitalization and that type of work. Now that's been different at StrikeCraft, right? Like at StrikeCraft, and that's one of the reasons I like Madrona Venture Labs as an incubator, is I had to understand, what a cap table was and how to think about the ownership structure and what times to bring on funding, to do great growth, how much funding I want to bring on, what goals we're setting for that, how to attract investors to the initiative. That was a whole different subset of skills for the CEO that was very, very different.
So how did your relationship with Madrona Lab start? How did that come about?
Yeah, so Kristen, the CEO of Koru, after we sold the business, I was talking to her and I said, look, she's, what you want to do next, how can I help you? And that's another thing, like networks matter, right? Like, and that's not just like somebody I trade a business card with. This is a dear, dear friend. I care more deeply about her health than what type of business we do together. I was like, I feel ready to be a CEO again. I had a lot of mental health challenges after the first go round. I made some not so great decisions about how to treat myself and the people around me. But I was feeling like I'd spent enough time from that since I sold the business in 2009. Here it was 2018, 2019. I was like, yeah, I want to do that again. I'm ready to be a CEO again. Some of that is hubris. I was like, I've been watching some of these CEOs and I don't think they do a good job.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
I can do that way better than them.
That's right. And so, Kristen introduced me to the chief technology officer, Jay Bartow, over at Madrona Venture Labs. And I had this idea for StrikeCraft already. I had come in with like, I have this concept, I see this problem, I kind of want to go after it. They actually at first were not fully convinced that I was ready to be a CEO. They're like, do you have the background to manage a business like this? And we spent a lot of time learning together and them learning to trust me through the incubator process, where they're like, yeah, I see.
How many little companies are in this incubator?
I think now they know better than me, so I'm guessing here, but I think they're constantly trying to start new companies. I think they spin out maybe 8 to 10 a year.
Okay.
And not, like I said, I might be a little over under. Mike Fridgen is their CEO at that team. He'd definitely be able to give the right number. But they're constantly, like when I was there were 2 or 3 other ideas that were percolating at any one point in time. Not all of them spin out, not all of them in the research phase are valid, or you might find a massive competitor and another issue that doesn't make it a great opportunity. and so you might back off from that.
Okay, and then so why? So were you talking any other venture firms besides Madrona Labs? You were fundraising.
So Madrona Venture Group, that is the bellwether enterprise software investor in the Pacific Northwest.
The number one, whatever.
Yeah,
right.
They led our seed round, and I'm very proud, that they saw opportunity in us. I certainly think they're an amazing team, and I think their real success story is that they were really early investors in Amazon. They saw what Jeff Bezos was building in his garage here in Seattle and wanted to get involved.
They've been around for a while,
a long time. Yeah. And so I was just over the moon that they wanted to be a part of our company. I mean, that's the way I think about it, right? Like our board members, our investors, they're my team. I'm deeply working with them and listening to them and trying to find new tidbits of information that can help me build a better StrikeGraph. And so they led our seed round. I was really proud of that. That was in like August of 2020.
The perfect fundraising environment.
Yeah, it was great. Things were going good, weren't they? Then we were growing really fast. We're still growing really fast, but just a year later, we raised our Series A. That was an $8 million round. That was a different lead investor. The lead investor for that round was Information Venture Partners out of Toronto, Canada. Great investor too. A little smaller from a team size, but long history of doing technology investing. And Alex Tong, that joined our board, has just been an amazing collaborator, a really great teammate. Yeah.
Now, was it during this time you were an entrepreneur in residence at Madrona, or that happened after your fundraising?
Yeah, so I did the entrepreneur in residence. So I kind of joined Madrona Venture Labs, the team there. We researched the market, the opportunity, the type of solutions and competitive landscape for the problem we were trying to solve. And at about January or February of 2020, Madrona Venture Labs was like, "Hey, Justin, we think this is a good idea. We're going to give you a small amount of funding, a very small amount. And we want you to go incorporate the company. We're your first investor. And we want you to go out and try and like get that prototype out the door and your first tranche of customers so you can raise a seed round." So the company was founded in February of 2020. I was joined by my co-founder, Brian Barrow, and we had this goal. We were like, I scraped together like a database with a kind of a little interface on the front end of it. And I thought this is kind of what a product might look like. And we said, we should try and go sign 6 customers for $1,000 check in the next 6 months. And if we do that, then maybe we can raise a real true seed round for the business. Well, we get to like August of 2020 and we've got 18 customers already. Like it's going gangbusters. It's crazy to me, like how huge a problem this was. That's really what was going on. Is we had a solution, but really we were testing the problem space. How big a problem is this? How much money are people willing to spend on it? How fast are they making decisions to buy? And so that led to us in August of 2020, Madrona Venture Group, the big investing firm, taking a look at us and being like, this is really exciting. We want to lead your seed round. And so then we raised 3.8 million in the seed round. And from their team, Hope Cochran joined our board. And that really kicked us off to launch our production software in November of 2020. And so really pretty soon after that, we had been kind of building the software in the background, what our ultimate product would be. But just a couple months later, after we raised that seed round, we launched that production product and started selling full annual subscriptions.
So from time I'm doing this experience in general, what do you see like some mistakes that startup founders are making when trying to fundraise that they're getting wrong?
Yeah. So not being, this being one of my first venture capital backed companies that I'm running as a CEO, the horror stories that I hear about are a little bit are like, one is getting board members that just don't align with how you like to work or you want to work. And I think that it's really hard when you're passionate about a business, about an initiative, and you're looking to fundraise and get capital so you can build that company. Sometimes you're like, I'll take the money that's available. And sometimes you have to. I want to be fair. You don't have the ability to choose a great teammate. But I think it's important as best you can to pick those great teammates, because you're going to be working with them for a while. And you're going to talk about hard topics, people that should be on the team or should not be on the team, whether you have the right vision or not. If you yourself as the CEO have the ability to succeed at it from an outcomes perspective that they and investors want, and your investors, your board, they can fire you. That's part of their job, is to be like, do we have the right leader at this company? So you want also them to have an emotional connection with you and care about you, and also care about you from the perspective, if you're not the right fit, to go ahead and make a decision that this is going to hurt Justin too. That could be a decision that they need to come to. Yeah.
So the name StrikeGraph, does that mean, has any significance or just a random name?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so hard to pick a name for a company these days.
It is. So you have to have all the social media handles, the ILCO.com, blase, blase. Oh crap, some company in the Philippines makes $10 million a year already has a name, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I had 3 rules when I was trying to come up with a name. And this was part of the process. Like, the incubator is kind of watching me. They're like, Justin, have you come up with a name for the company yet? I'm like, no, I haven't come up with a name yet, and they're going to judge like whatever you decide. Everybody does at the end of the day. So I had 3 rules that I was really focused on for coming up with a name. One thing is that I wanted it to be English words.
Okay.
I don't want to make fake words.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, how do you spell it? I don't know. Does it like it sounds, or is this weird? So I needed to be able to get English words. The second thing is I wanted the .com. I didn't want to do a weird TLD at the end. It's just confusing when people try to email you or try to look up your website or stuff like that. And the third thing is I wanted it to seem vaguely security-esque. And so it took, I did all kinds of hunts. I had like a thesaurus up all the time. I'd be like putting in words and be like, give me like similar synonyms or even antonyms for the things that I'm not trying to be, and patching them together in weird ways. And then you go see, it's like, is the .com available? It's not available.
Or it's available for sale for $10 million.
That's right. Yeah. And where I landed, I think the reason that I liked StrikeGraph, and I had a lot, there were others that I thought were more exciting, but something I couldn't get the .com usually was the reason that it wouldn't work. So much of like the way people have solved the problem that we solved in the past has been like really horrible spreadsheets. And a graph is a data form that's called an ontological structure. So it doesn't just take into account like, what are these 2 data points? It takes into account what the relationship between the 2 data points are. And that's a lot of what's powerful about our technology, is that we have this incredible graphing map of a lot of the content that goes into security practices. And so you can really like leap from like risks into control activity to validation techniques to testing. And because we built that graph, that map, and we can strike through it to what you want to get out of it, I think I found some meaning in the name structure.
So who is your perfect customer?
Yeah, it's really important, I think, as a business to kind of identify your ideal customer profile. StrikeGraph as a platform is really geared towards someone that has some expertise in these compliance outcomes. And I think that's one thing to like, a lot of people told me it's important to know what you do and don't do, right? And so one of the things StrikeGraph doesn't do is, we are not a security tool unto ourselves, right? Like, we're not going to encrypt your data better. We're not going to force password protection in systems. We don't do your identity management for your platform. But what we do is we collect all that great activity and we drive at the security audits or certifications that you need to receive. We deliver those. So we're very focused on cataloging, designing the right security posture, cataloging that security activity, and then certifying or auditing that customer so they get that sales asset. And so that's slightly different, in that there are great cybersecurity tools that are out there that we pull in data from to show that you're doing the good activity that you need to do. And so that's really core to our value prop.
So as far as pricing, like a lot of people, like whether they have they have a coaching business or small business or bakery or tech startup, like they have a challenge with pricing, right? I think I heard someone say, whatever you're charging, charge 10 times more, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
How did you determine your pricing model? What's your process of finally figuring that out?
Yeah. One of our biggest spaces that we're disrupting are literally the auditors. Like one of my biggest frustrations of the audit firms themselves that have in the past delivered these certifications is that they're fraught with like really poor testing techniques. Like you can send the same data set inside the same audit firm to two different people and get two different results. And that just means that they're failing at actually, a good analysis of the standard. So what we wanted to do was figure out how much those audit firms were charging. And it was exorbitant, $80,000 for a SOC 2. And that, when we talk about like access, like how does a small business like get this done, that they can't afford that. And so that was one problem we needed to solve, is we actually needed to bring the price down. But we needed to do it through technology because we still wanted like SaaS gross margin, like software style gross margins on our solution. So that was one of the ways that we priced the market. And one of the competitors that we think of is, like PricewaterhouseCoopers or A-Line, these are very storied old audit firms that do this stuff by hand over and over and over again. We just believe that and have built a platform where technology kind of drives repeatable testing results.
Can you give a brief overview of like your marketing and sales and our business development process, like how you market yourself, how you get sales?
Yeah. So a lot of investors will call this like, what's your go-to-market? They'll say, how are you doing that? So for us, I'm going to start from the other end of the funnel, like where we close the deal and then move back up to how they might have fallen in. Not everybody does it that way, but I like to think.
Yeah, Army, you call that backwards planning.
There you go. Yeah.
Start the end result and then go backwards plan.
Yeah. So we have a team of account executives and they receive like a sales qualified lead. So somebody that we really, that our definition of that is someone that is interested in buying. So they'll raise their hand and they'll be like, I'd like to take a meeting or see a demo. And for them, they're prepared to do a demonstration of the platform and also listen to the customer. What are they trying to achieve? And what we're listening for there is like, where do they perceive value in working with us? So that we can make sure that we have value to provide them. Because if those aren't in sync, you're going to churn that customer out, in a year. They're just not going to come back. And likely you'll get a bad review too. So they're a great team. We have about 6 account executives. We split on geography presently, and they're just phenomenal at getting the deals closed.
You just company only in the United States or across the world? We
have customers across the world. But our employees are mostly in the United States. We have some teammates in Central America, just because of my history there, and a couple of teammates in Canada as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So then how do they get those sales qualified leads, right? Like where do they come in? And there's 2 major funnels for how they come in. One is what we call inbound, and that's from marketing efforts. So we have a marketing leader. They make sure that our website is up and search engine optimization is working. They might plan for some paid advertising like Google ads. They might plan for conference attendance that we're going to. They actually help me organize getting to meet with you, Jason, so press PR type work that we might do. So we call that inbound, and that drives a certain amount of those sales qualified leads. But early on at the company, we didn't do that because when you're very early on, you kind of want to like see a dollar spent here, like resulting in an actual like sales outcome. You're not guessing that this will result in something. And so we did what we call a lot of outbound, which means literally we had a team of sales development representatives picking up the phone or the email and contacting people and say, hey, are you interested in solving this problem?
Old school cold calling, so to speak.
Yeah. And we built that motion first, and then we added the inbound with the marketing team. And so that's how we drive a lot of that go-to-market work. We're constantly shifting it and testing it. We're making an interesting transition these days. We talk a lot about it internally, where I'm like, we're big enough now, hundreds of customers, where I'm like, we need to be more focused on our strengths. When we were an early stage startup, everything's like a test or a trial, or just seeing what will work. And you spend 80% of your time on those trials. And I'm like, now we need to shift over where like 70% of our time is spent on things we know work, and just 30% of our resources are going to things that we wonder if it could be useful in growing the business. And so that's been a little bit of gear shift, for the team.
Okay. Speaking of conferences, I saw y'all going to something called a RSA conference in San Francisco, I think next week.
Yeah, that's a big cybersecurity conference.
That's like a big one to go to.
Yeah. This will actually be my first time attending it, so I'm kind of excited to go. Should be a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's the purpose of just like meet customers. Like, are you gonna give a speech or like do any demos or networking?
So we'll have a booth. We'll have account execs there. We'll be doing a lot of demos. Our ideal buyer is like a CISO, somebody that knows security. We have a groundbreaking software, but sometimes if you haven't worked in the space at all, it's hard to understand why StrikeGraph is so unique in what we do, and also how heavily we've invested in the solution itself, as opposed to marketing and branding necessarily. And so I, of course, am meeting with a lot of colleagues. I'll meet with other companies that we might decide to partner with. There will be investors there, media there. So generally, it's just like, I think you're kind of getting in the same geographic space with a bunch of like-minded individuals, and hopefully sharing what might be an opportunity or just an idea of something to invent that you hadn't thought of before.
So, Jessica, who do you consider your mentors? Who mentors you?
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of them, and I'm incredibly grateful. These days, I would say my the board members on my team are deep mentors. They help me all the time. And then even the broader investors, like we'll have people on the board that invested, but we'll have investors that didn't take up a board seat, but I know them well. One of our investors is a team called Rise of the Rest, which is part of the Revolution.com fund, which is Steve Case's fund from AOL fame. And I was just at their retreat last week in Phoenix, and there's a lot of mentorship for me there. I take it wherever I can find it in a way.
And then probably to me, the more important part of the question, who are you mentoring right now?
Oh, yeah. My team, certainly, I try to provide guidance for. I am not a micromanager. I don't think that you get the most creative contribution, the most passionate contribution when you micromanage an employee or a staff member or somebody that reports to you. So I do my best. I'll be very specific, like, I'm here as a thought partner for you. We can talk about this problem, but you're going to make the ultimate decision about how to go on this particular issue. And so that's something I try to do. I just wrapped up my board membership, my board contribution for the ADA Academy, which is a boot camp for women and gender diverse people here in Seattle.
That would be my next question.
Yeah. So that was a great thing to join in. And I think it goes both ways. They mentored me in a lot of way. I hadn't participated in a board in quite that way. So it's fun to see what my board members must go through when they look at us being a board member at another organization. It allows me to be really empathetic with my teammates. Yeah.
So what does ADA developers do? It's like a boot camp, or
yeah,
I kind of know what they do from the website and like LinkedIn profiles, whatever. What do they actually do?
Yeah, I think boot camp would probably be the smallest phrase you could use, in a way, of what they do. I think it's a really amazing organization, and many of the engineers at StrikeGraph graduated from there. So we are not only big fans of what they do, we are consumers of their product too, at the end of the day. So, like me, like I went to college for theater, right? Now I'm a little lucky. I knew about programming before I ever went to college. I was really into it. So I was able to make the transition to tech. But a lot of people, they're interested in it, but especially if you're a woman, maybe it didn't seem like a very comfortable culture to join, like there wasn't people that, kind of knew how to treat others professionally necessarily in the engineering environment, no matter what culture or gender they may represent when they come in. And so this school was built to help people that had already graduated with a degree. Generally, that's not always true, but most of the time, make that transition into tech. And it's a very robust educational program. Like, you do spend 6 months in classroom, but then you actually spend 6 months in internship. To that point about college being about literally doing work in the thing, like learning the habit of the thing. That's what they do. And they have internships, everything from like Amazon to like little startups.
Yeah, I know my niece that's finished a program and she has an internship with Amazon right now. So.
Yeah. And it's a great community. They're very supportive of each other, very interested in DEI as an initiative for our industry. And I've been a big fan all along of helping talent that was overlooked get an opportunity to participate in tech if that's what they want to do. That's what I did in Costa Rica by telling all the punk rock kids that they could come work with me and not have to wear a tie.
So I've been asked this question recently, my guest, right? And so like all these tech opportunities like in Seattle, San Francisco, big cities, but probably not so much like the small rural communities, right? How do we make sure like the people in the rural communities get these same opportunities in tech?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, every time I go back to LaConner, I think about it. So I live equidistant between Vancouver, BC and Seattle. Very rural area, the Skagit Valley. It's tulip season. All the tulips are up. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very agricultural, very diverse. Right across the Swinomish Channel is the Swinomish tribe. And just an incredible culture. I can hear them teaching drumming in the afternoons sometimes. And we have a lot of young people whose parents are likely farmers or farm workers around us. And I don't know that I have the answer, but I'm certainly interested in how does this region get an opportunity to build businesses as well, especially around technology. And I don't think the answer is always a boot camp, but because it's such a vibrant and exciting environment to participate in, to build these companies, I think that there's a lot of different hats to wear, in these types of organizations. And I think that what I would hope happens over time, and I would like to do this as time allows, is find an opportunity to participate with, where young people are at, where their interest level is, and see if we can't build an opportunity to on-ramp their ideas into businesses. I could see, especially in Skagit Valley, a lot of interesting technology around agriculture being invented there.
Yeah. So this is becoming like a random question, and you might know the answer. But there's a lot of stuff on TikTok now, right? Canceling TikTok, getting rid of it. Is TikTok really a security concern or just like political mumbo jumbo? Because people say, yeah, they have the data, but so does Facebook, so does all these other different companies across the world.
Yeah. I think it's a legitimate security concern, but I also think Facebook is a legitimate security concern. And let me see if I can describe why it is. I think I have a pretty good handle on it. Certainly, like, let's say that that a bad actor, another country, wanted to really kind of make things, angry or gum up the works in the United States. Let's say that they just wanted to advertise a lot, or
like they did on Facebook in 2016, supposedly.
Yeah. But then imagine that you're not just like putting an ad out there that being like, oh, don't love your neighbor, hate on them. Right. And the same ad goes to everybody, because that doesn't really work. Like, a lot of us would be like, oh, that's not what we agree to do. Right. Instead, imagine that you knew every person on Facebook as an individual, which they do. And you knew exactly what your desires were, but not only your desires, more importantly, imagine that we knew what you were afraid of. And we can customize that advertisement that you see on Facebook to exactly your fears, to drive you to hate immigrants, or to believe that there is no common ground with a conservative-minded person. You can literally drive a wedge person by person apart from each other. Now, that is exactly what was so nefarious about 2016 with Facebook. It is not that they kind of like broadly were able to throw ads up like a billboard on the highway. It's that every person on that highway saw a different ad on the billboard. And it was carefully constructed for the right mental anguish, and literally trying to drive mental anguish towards you. And TikTok has that data. Facebook has that data. And I don't trust any of them in a way. Yeah, it's really frustrating.
So are you, is your company big on social media as for like advertising and like marketing, that kind of stuff?
We do some Google ads.
Okay.
We do post on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I think there are professional networks, and probably that's the number one social media that I'm engaged in.
Okay.
I haven't posted on Facebook in years. After 2016, I realized one of the things I realized in 2016 was that like I am a part of the problem, because I keep posting like my photo on there, and then my family likes it.
Yeah. It drives me crazy. Like you'll see some random Facebook post, Facebook's stealing our data, blah, blah, blah. The next day, I'm, at my son's happy birthday party, here's the address, come and get, like, can you make a connection here?
That's right. Yeah. And it's weird how it infected everything. Like I was trying to help organize crew for sailing, and I was, but I didn't want to use Facebook, but that's just where I kept getting driven to, right? Like, oh, if you want to put an event together to get the crew out to go sailing, you need to post it on Facebook. And I'm like, but then I'm driving people to go use Facebook, and I don't believe in it.
And for me, like, it's like I have a lot of relatives only use Facebook, younger relatives only use like TikTok or Snapchat. So like each social media platform is like, I communicate with a certain age person on there, right?
That's right. So there is something I did that I thought was really cool, and I highly recommend it. A while ago, I have a niece and nephew. My sister was very concerned about them putting a lot of data into these apps as well. And so I said, you know what? Why don't I just set up a Slack account for our little family? And we can post whatever we want to each other, and it's safe and it's secure, and it's not just broadcast to everybody. And if we want to delete it, we can. And as a matter of fact, the free account deletes everything after like 6 months.
That's a brilliant idea.
So yeah, I when I want to post a picture to the family, it's a closed loop. And then the other one that I'm actually really enjoying lately is Mastodon. So
I've heard of that, but I have no idea what it is. It's supposed to like a Twitter alternative or something.
That's right. It's like a Twitter, and it works really good. I mean, it's not got every bell and whistle, but I didn't use all the bells and whistles in Twitter. And if you go to my Twitter account, I have one. It'll see, like, you'll see the address to go see Mastodon. So I've liked it a lot lately, and it's what's called federated. So different communities can be in the larger universe or not be, and the universe itself can push out parts that it doesn't want. So if you've got a hardcore neo-Nazi server on Mastodon, it will likely get pushed out of the whole community.
Okay.
And not be connected.
So I know a lot of social media platforms will say that they they give away data, sell data, whatever, or to add to whatever, because they have to make money. Is there a way you think we have a social media platform that doesn't do this?
Well, I don't.
It would be profitable.
Yeah, I don't know how they make money then, because their whole,
because no one's gonna pay like $19.99 like Elon Musk is doing, where the price is, right, per month.
Right, and that's their whole play. They were like, we are gonna hyper target individuals so that you're selling to exactly who you want to with your ad. That is, we know enough about anybody. So even though they're not selling your data, they are selling the ability to catalog you as an individual for that hyper-targeted ad.
You are the product, right?
Yeah. And of course, like, there's a lot of good products, that are just trying to find the right buyers. I'm not, that's probably, the majority of what's going on. Yeah. But the impact of the bad actors is so massive that you really have to take a step back and look at what you're doing. And the refusal to actually editorialize the content on there, I get it. Like, oh, we hired a bunch of editors. Yeah. You did not spend your billions of dollars to really make sure that the content is ethically, produced, and because people are too excited about the profits,
Yeah, I know. We're getting like you buy a product, and then like next day, like, dude, I already bought your product. Why am I still getting ads?
That's right. Yeah.
Fix your algorithm. I bought your product already.
Or that creepy feeling when you were like talking about going on like a whale watching tour, and you pull up the app and like, there's the ad.
Yeah. On like a whole different computer or platform, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. So next, I'm pretty sure it's pretty important to you because it's on your about page on your on LinkedIn. Can you talk about the 7 social sins?
Yeah, and I don't have it memorized as well as I should, but um, Frederick, I learned about it in reading a book. It's essentially, I can't remember the exact title, but it's kind of like the Gandhi's diary, and this is something he had in his diary. But it was written by Frederick Lewis Donaldson. Do you have it there in front of you? Would
Yeah,
you read it for me? Yeah.
yeah. So it's the 7 social sins: wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, worship without sacrifice, politics without principle. Frederick Lewis Donaldson, 1925.
Yeah. So look, you can be really passionate about building companies, right? And want to generate wealth for you, your employees, and your investors. I certainly would like to do that with StrikeGraph. But I also need to counterbalance that, with the impact that that has. Otherwise, we wind up with like some of the issues we had in 2016, because the goal for only wealth without some measure of where that impact has, without some ability to understand the trade-offs that you're making, leads to bad outcomes. And we see that, I think, in worship at times. We see that in science at times. And we see that in all these categories. And so I tried to carry that with me a little bit. Like, there's a price to pay in almost any decision in life. And if you're not trying as best you can to be aware of that price, you make really bad decisions. At a prior company, at Koru, we were working in the human capital management space. And what we had developed was an AI product to predict the likelihood that a job applicant would be a high performer. That's incredibly dangerous technology, because and we saw that Amazon had this issue. They built a similar AI product that recommended a lot of white men.
I remember that. I remember there's a big controversy about that. I remember that having
Yeah.
news.
And so I was really terrified that we were playing with fire a little bit and we could do more harm than good. And so what we built then, we said, okay, so we're nervous. This is powerful technology. What's going to happen? We built a testing harness where every model that we developed, something that would do a prediction, we had a whole suite of tests with, different protected classes. We look for ageism. We look for, sexism in the model to see what would come up, because we had different companies' data being built into those models. And so it's that kind of thoughtfulness that I think matters to me in what you're passionate about, and ensuring that you're aware of the trade-offs that you're making.
So next, talk about your decision process to have a remote work company and unlimited vacation.
Yeah. So I don't think COVID gave us a ton of decision making around the remote. So like, we founded the company in February of 2020. And if you would have asked me then, like, what I was the most excited about, I was excited about coming into the office every day and seeing everybody. But and this is one thing I love about, a lot of my activities, startups being one of them, is like, you have to be aware of the context you're operating in and just do your best to do that. And so COVID made it where it wasn't healthy for anyone to come into the office. And so we had to do things remote. But then you also need to understand, like, what are the advantages available to me in doing this? And so one thing is that we could hire a more diverse workforce and I mean diverse, not just from a race perspective or pure culture perspective, but also like geographically. So, across the United States, we've got talent.
Yeah, because people in Atlanta think differently from people in Seattle versus New York City.
Yeah, we had different experiences and backgrounds, and Atlanta certainly has some tough history and some real amazing successes, and some heroes and heroines and everybody in between that I'm quite proud of. And so I think that I'll say a couple things about the remote work. I think from a business perspective, I'm a pretty touchy-feely kind of CEO, CTO. I like the human interaction. One of the things that doesn't always make me good at is like strict metric achievement, for teams. And the being remote made me really lean into like, okay, for for us all to be successful, the contribution from this team needs to look like this. And so I did a better job of being metric driven, and designing StrikeGraph from a business perspective. And so that was good. There is an impact. We have to humanize each other. And if you're not in physical spaces, it's really hard to do. One of the things I learned in theater is about 80% of communication is nonverbal. And so if I can't see your eyes and your body and that language, I may have a hard time understanding your motivation or how you're feeling. And so I think that now we're trying to bring people together in same spaces. We've got a big team coming to RSA where we'll be able to interact as StrikeGraph staff and kind of be in each other's physical spaces. So that's important, I call that humanizing each other, to rehumanize each other. I think so the remote thing is kind of got forced on us, but you make the best of it you can in a way. Yeah.
And how about the unlimited vacation? What's the thought process on that?
Yeah. So I just want to be fair. Like I think we were kind of, I'm not sure this is the ultimate answer, like unlimited vacation. The reason that companies broadly have done the unlimited vacation thing is because you actually have to account. If you say like, I'm going to give you 2 weeks off a year, that's considered like a financial benefit for the employee. And legally you have to account for that. And so they just didn't want to account for that. And they also found that if they told people unlimited vacation, a lot of times they wouldn't take it. So this is not like companies giving that is not always because they're just,
no, it's not. It's unlimited vacation is actually a benefit for the company.
That's right. Yeah. But it's been such a thing like that employees like expect it that, and I didn't have a better alternative that we did it. And we do try to lean into, I think the first thing that I really try to do is respect people's vacation. So when they're on holiday, how can we not contact them? Right. And same goes for me. I kind of hope like when I'm gone, I don't get a call. It's not always the case, but that's what I'd like to,
I mean, you're the CEO, right?
That's right. Yeah. So sometimes there's an emergency, and thank goodness my family is really, understanding about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to remote work. So I'm a big believer in remote work. I'm a big believer also that everyone is not a remote worker.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that people you hire can actually handle remote work? You have like some kind of process, some kind of test you give them as a part of your hiring process?
Yeah. Not so much a test as just there's some basic understandings that help us do better. And again, like it's hard to teach someone the art of something, but we can give you the basic skills and then you can get there. So one of the things that we do is it's like, hey, when you're first off, name your hours so that people know when you're in the office, and then be on Slack. I want to see the little green light on. And so that's really important. I know you're in the office. I know you're probably working, and I know you're available, and I can ping you if we need to have a quick conversation. So that's really important on the remote work. The second is that we ask that everybody get on video if at all possible. And as a matter of fact, it should be the outlier that you can't be on video. Yeah. And again, that's just we're not trying to invade your living room, but we are trying to see you.
You're paying a decent salary. Like I always kill you. Like you have these people like, I'm tired of being in a Zoom. I'm not gonna be on a Zoom video anymore. I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? This person's probably paying you money or whatever the case it'd be. Like,
yeah.
To me, it's just common courtesy. Turn your camera on. Like, the means. Don't get me wrong. Like, you can call an employee, hey, this ain't a scheduled meeting, but man, I need to ask you this quick question. 5 minutes. Okay, maybe you have the camera off, right? Because
that's right.
But it's like it's the weekly meeting every Friday at 1 p.m. your time. Know what's happening. Like that's the one thing I don't get.
Turn the video on. And so we make that a part of our policy, right? Like there's certainly like times when when you can't, like maybe you're traveling to a conference and so you just not in front of your computer because we've asked you to go.
Or maybe my kids use the school this time, but man, they're here and it's like hell's all loose, right?
Although I celebrate that. I like whenever like I'm with a colleague and the kids come into the room, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Like I try to not make that an issue.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. I think it's a treat to invite each other into our lives a little bit that way. And I have a colleague and her son, the colleague will sometimes say like, you shouldn't come in while I'm on a call. And he says, "Oh, but I know Justin. He's my friend."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's heartwarming for me. I
Yeah.
really dig that, and I want this colleague to feel comfortable. That I'm okay with that. Like that's not an issue.
So earlier you talked about the culture you're building in your company. What kind of culture are you trying to build at your company?
Yeah, we definitely have like a great set of values, like defined values. I think that one is that we, there's a couple things that are really important in there. I think one thing that I'll start out with is we want to be successful, and so we do need to define what success is. We need to communicate what that looks like, and there needs to be an expectation that while we might make mistakes, the trend line.
And that's a good point. You have all these come like, they want to do all the quote right things, right?
Right.
But doing the right thing doesn't matter if you got a business, right?
That's right. I mean, if you're not building a good business, you're going to go out of business. It doesn't matter the culture that you built. So we need to get things done. As a matter of fact, I think that's the phrase we use in our values. And so that's really important to us. And sometimes it's not a good fit if you can't, get things done. We need to be fair with ourselves and you. And believe me, it's in no one's interest to fail over and over and over again. That is not compassionate to that employee. Yeah. The other thing is deep transparency. So it's okay to talk about the problems. It's okay to discuss what went wrong. It's okay to make a mistake. So that's another part of our culture, because we can't solve like deep problems if we're not able to understand the problem well. You won't be able to create a solution. So that's a pretty critical part of the culture. And then I think another one that's really important to us is that you're more than your work. So this is not all that we do, and that means like carving out time for your hobbies and the extra things and the things that you're passionate about, and also celebrating that in a way, being able to say, hey, I love that you're a part of this, and maybe go visit them while they do it. If they race bicycles or, there's something else, I like to go, connect in those events sometimes with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're hiring right now, but when you're hiring, like for whatever position, what can somebody do to make themselves stand up? Besides, of course, you fill application out, link with a case. But what do someone can do, like put themselves like on the top of the pile, so to speak? Get someone's attention in your company.
I think you got to show passion for the practice. If you're an engineer, a software developer, are you passionate about technology? Is that your focus? If you're on our sales team, are you passionate about people, getting connected with them, learning what their problems are, and seeing if you're a solution? So that passion is really important. It helps a lot that you are a good teammate. That's critical. Like I'll hold passion and ability to collaborate well over any technical skill set. Oftentimes, like the technical skill set we might be able to get to or learn ourselves into, but the other two you got to fundamentally bring with you. I will say that I built a lot of teams over the years, and I cannibalize a lot of times the teams that I worked with in the past for the new team that we're putting together. So I think all of my leadership team, except for my co-founder, we've all worked at other companies together in the past. And that's probably true of a lot of the people that we've hired, is that they probably knew somebody that's already been hired in a way, and that they built a relationship with that person at that prior company, or even through some other relationship where we got to know them before we made a hiring decision. Then they kind of go through the interview process. We make sure that we have general consensus that manager and the team around them thinks this is a great person to add before we take a final decision.
Our next part of the question, like, it kills me if people say I'm a hiring expert. No, you're not.
Right.
Like odds are you're not hiring. Every person you hire was not 100% not a home run, right?
I know. Yeah.
So like, having said that, what's the process for y'all to decide, okay, this person is not a fit or not a match or not making it, so to speak, right? And how do y'all go about, let this person know that this isn't working out?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just want to say that you're absolutely right. Like, I think I've hired a lot of people, but I also think that like 2/3 of the people 2/3 of the people I hired were exceptional fits, but 1/3, like I might have made a mistake. Right? Like,
it kills me on LinkedIn. You see these profiles hire an expert.
Yeah.
Are you really?
I know.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Let me see some stats behind this claim you're making, because I'm a bit some money you're not telling the truth.
And people change, right? Like
Yep.
you might come in one situation and over time things change or what you want to do. So, you know, it's not static.
And it's people too, like when I was in the Army, I've had I took an old job and the other person I took this place for, like, you know, this person is like piece of shit. He doesn't work well. And they come superstar for me, right?
Yeah.
Vice versa. I tell somebody this guy is worthless, right? I'm okay. I don't say they're worthless, you know, but I say he's not a good performer, and like be the best soldier ever for this other person, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So let's say that, I mean, first off, that transparency part initially means like a lot of like really important discussions early on. So like, I actually don't, I think it's, I get why we do it. You know, some people need some rigor around like providing feedback, and that's why we do the big reviews or 6 month reviews or stuff like that. But I try and talk like at that one-on-one that week, what's going well, what's not. And even I try to lean in with, you know, compassionate discussion about what the challenges are early on. So that's part of the Strike Graph culture. And I get, you know, a lot of people tell me what I'm doing wrong as a CEO. I try to listen carefully and balance that with what I can improve. And so that's one important aspect of what we do. I think we do that pretty good. But sometimes things can get to a place where it's starting to feel like we need a real serious, measured change in what's going on. And in that case, we write a performance improvement plan, and the manager for that individual will write a performance improvement plan. Our template is really amazing. Kudos to our director of assessment. He helped us design this, but it's based upon our values. So like one of our values is we get stuff done. But let's say that you're kind of like not meeting expectations for delivery. In the performance improvement plan, we'll say where in the values you're kind of missing our values, you know, just so we kind of level set what the expectations are. And we put a time frame and goals around those particular issues in a written document, and we ask the employee and the manager to sign it. Then there's a period of time where they have an opportunity to really bring that improvement to bear. They're working closely with their manager. They're there as a mentor to help them and talk about what's working and not. And certainly you might start off like not making progress, but then the more we talk about it, the more we see where the issues are happening, you as an employee have an opportunity to improve. And I like to say, like, there's kind of a saying that like, oh, this is just like an off ramp. Like, that's why you write these things. That's not true for us. 50% of the time, we've seen employees meet the goals of the performance improvement plan and just be really successful with us. And I'm very proud of that. I am more proud of that than, you know, that change and that work together than many of the HR initiatives that we've done, that we truly believe that these plans are put together, and we work very hard to be thoughtful about them in a way that gives an opportunity for success for that employee. However, sometimes it's not successful, right? And then we need to have an honest conversation that this is not a good fit, and we're able to look back at what our goals were and what we were trying to achieve and how we missed them. And of course, that's emotional. No one likes to be told that it's not working. I've sat on both sides of that seat before myself personally, and it is really hard, you know, no matter which you are. But I try to be compassionate. And I have learned a long time ago that it is not compassionate to keep someone doing something that they consistently fail at. That is hurting them. And they need an opportunity to find the team or the initiative or the project or the people that they can see success around. And if we're not that team, then that's totally okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The sooner let them go, the better. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing gets me, like people, you have like HR people say, you know, fire fast. No one fires fast, because there's always, I can't let Jason go. This is what anniversary tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's a weekend, you know, or it's always some excuse, right?
Yeah. It's never a good time.
No.
You always got your life going on. But the problem is that the longer you go, the harder and harder it is. And the more invested that person is.
And only that, the people that work for you who are actually doing a good job, like, man, Jason's still here?
Yes.
Like, how many chances is this dude going to get, right?
I think not enough managers understand that they are losing real face in the one job that they are so meant to do, which is keep that team working well together. And if I've been that staff member, that had another staff member that really was awful, and been like, man, you see it, you're the manager, why don't you let them go? It's like, this is your job.
So how do you make sure your manager get trained correctly? I think a lot of people, they get promoted to management and there's no training for them, right? How do you make sure they get, I won't say leadership skills, but like get groomed to the new position?
Yeah, we do manager training because we have a lot of people that weren't a manager before, but then move into a management position. And there is a manager training that we offer for anyone that's doing that process. The other thing I think is really critical is set a good example. If I can be a great manager and they can see me doing the hard work, making the tough decisions when it's time, then they will understand that it's both my expectation as well as their opportunity to do the same.
So back to tech. Is there any new tech out there that excites you?
That's a great question. I'm jaded, Jason. I'll tell you what I'm super curious about is the end problem in tech. And it's funny because I really am curious about like quantum computing. I think like vastly faster processors are going to create really interesting new problem solving techniques that are really hard to do on the types of computers that we build today, no matter how massive they are, right? Although I think there's some very innovative things being done with software emulators around quantum style computing as well that could be a bridge into that hardware space. I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, I think if we see a lot of leaps and bounds in either quantum computing or simulated quantum computing, we're going to see an arms race around encryption, data encryption, because it could be that we're very easily able to crack data encryption. I know that there's been a lot of talk about like ChatGPT and stuff like that, and I actually just wrote a couple things on Mastodon about this morning because I don't see it. Like I am not like. I've worked a lot in AI. I've been doing natural language processing and algorithmic, programming for a long time. And me and a colleague were playing with ChatGPT yesterday, and I was like, what is the actual point of this thing? Like, I just do not get it, because we were asking it questions and it was like a really bad Cliff Notes. It was really bad Cliff Notes,
It's like it's just maybe a higher level Google, if that,
Yeah. So let's see what's going on here, right? Like, okay, we got this new natural language processing solution, ChatGPT-3, and it does a really good job of summarizing an article. Okay, well, just a couple of years ago, I had models off the shelf that could pull out the main ideas, pull out the supporting arguments, pull out all that data in just an absolutely fine way. It wasn't that big a deal. The only other thing that it's slightly good at is forming paragraphs. So we went from it being able to like write a sentence with proper grammar to be like, oh, I can piece together 2 or 3 paragraphs. Okay, that's better. What are they using it for? The search engines are further disintermediating the searcher looking for information from the source material, and not with any added value, right? Because they can't even look at that source material and delineate what's true and not. They're just sucking up the internet. And so you can get a lot of fake bad information out of these systems. And the only reason it seems like it's intelligent is because it can form a complete paragraph. And so I get it. It is a turn of the crank better than what we've had in natural language processing systems, but the hype is not worth the squeeze.
And it gets me like on LinkedIn, like every other post on LinkedIn is like, use ChatGPT for this, use ChatGPT for this. And you look who posts, like it's a marketer, someone who has no tech background, like, do you really know what you're talking about? And back to the hype, do you think that all this hype because it's Sam Altman who's the CEO, because he has a former YC Combinator CEO
absolutely
background, he has all these people. I think that's part of it too.
There's a lot of dollars invested, billions of dollars invested in these things.
Because it's Sam Altman.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, this has got to be, we got to figure out a way to monetize it now. Like we put all this money into it, and this is all we got. And so I love that we're making progress. I think there's a lot there. I don't know that I see this like magical moment that this zeitgeist that people seem to see. I I will say that what I do think is quite interesting about it is its ability to write code. And so I think every software developer in the world should be playing with it, like, write me a function that does this and seeing what it spits out. So, but remember, code is not English, right? And there is a really distinct, like, beginning, middle, end to the way a function works. It's logical. It's like logics, like quantitative thought structures in a way. And so I do think that that's intriguing about what it's doing. But I also see what it's doing. It's been able to gather up every open source project in the world, all the code that's in there, and try to predict what the code should look like that you want out of it.
Is there a new tech out there that actually kind of scares you? Like, man, this is not good for humanity?
I think the quantum thing is a little scary, because if we lose all our encryption, no data is safe at the end of the day. Like, our ability to, like, bank online goes out the window, because all your passwords will be decrypted as you send it into the server. It'll know your login. So that's the one that I think could break a lot of things before it fixes anything. It's pretty scary. I think that I'm not sure. I wonder how people are going to deal with AI generated video and audio. That is a little scary, because I read about a security issue where essentially they took recordings of a woman and used those recordings to generate their voice, what they wanted the voice to say, and then basically made a phishing call to that person's father that sounded like that woman. And so I think you're seeing an ability of AI systems to fool our brains in places where we trust communication. And we've seen this before, right? Like the Gutenberg press is a perfect example of, like, the 1800s with pamphlet printing. You could print whatever you wanted on a piece of paper, and people are like, oh, maybe it's like the Bible. Maybe I should believe it that way. So I think that's a little scary, and there's no solution. These tools are here today. People are just going to be able to be careful about discerning what honestly they can trust and not.
Yeah, like, how do you know what to trust? There's deep fakes, on calls, like, you see stuff, on TV, and they'll tell you this is a deep fake. Is it a person? Like, looks like the person.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, maybe it looks like me with Instagram filter, but I could pass for me. The voice sounds the same. It's a little glitch here and there. Like,
right. I saw once an AI product that would, depending on your, all the data they collect on you, and there's a lot. Let's say you're logged into Facebook and then you go navigate to another website, right? They might have a lot of information from Facebook about you. They might be able to tell that you're Latino, that's your, like, cultural background. And they would use AI to regenerate the images on the website to look like people of your culture.
Yeah.
So, you're just going to have to be careful that they're selling you something here, And
the trouble is, I think there's a lot of people who are not tech savvy, right?
Yeah.
That everything, it's on the internet, must be true. I've seen this, it's not, or, like, I won't say gullible or naive, but, gullible or naive, right? Then all the stuff works.
Yeah, because what we could rely on is shifting. Now, what I hope happens is that the outlets, the media producers that we do want to trust, that do drive themselves to good ethics and practice good editorialism, kind of get lifted up in this environment where it's like, I can't trust anything, but, let's say, I think the Republic or, like, Wall Street Journal might be a conservative leaning type media outlet, but maybe you're like, no, they have a good editorial group. They do their research. I kind of trust, that they're factual in their reporting. For me, I have, like, a New York Times subscription, and I realize probably a lot of people perceive that as a little more liberal, but I go to that specific outlet because I trust that there are human beings making decisions about what goes into it.
Yeah, news, that's another story, right? You got Fox News, they're getting sued right now for, the voter fraud thing. They,
right.
Whatever, CNN, a lot of people call them the clown news network,
Yeah.
It's like, the days of, what's his name? Man, can't think of the guy back in the 60s or 70s, Walter Cronkite. The days of Walter Cronkite are long over, unfortunately, right?
They're long gone. Yeah. I think our first issue, we were trying to solve access to that information. And then we were trying to make that information more approachable because it was more visual, like, it's storytelling in a way. But now, it's just so easy to generate that information. You don't even actually need human beings to do it. A machine can do it.
Yeah.
That you're just going to have to be really careful about what trust. Yeah.
Yeah. So on to a more fun topic.
Okay.
Let's talk about your tattoos.
Oh yeah.
So how many do you have?
Oh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think six or 7. Yeah.
And how long ago since you got your last one?
Let's see. I got this part on my arm, my sleeve done like 2 years ago,
Okay.
2 or 3 years ago. And this is for the South. These
Okay.
are like different flowers that you'd find in the South, magnolia.
Trying to keep the Southern connection.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a deep part of my culture and my background and where I come from. And there's a lot that I love about it that I carry with me wherever I go. Yeah.
And how long, when did you get your first tattoo?
I was 19.
19?
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in a really conservative household, and I was away to
Justin,
college.
you're going to hell for this tattoo.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And
you're gonna stick with the devil now.
Yeah, I marred the temple, as it would say. I got my first one on my leg, way back in college, the second I was out of the house. Of course, like at that time in the early 90s, there's a lot of like interest in body modification, piercings, and I was really interested in all of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like definitely like more professional now, versus back in the day.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of acceptance over it, and it's like you were in the military, they had the rule about the wrist, and I think like the collar, like you didn't do anything like that. But today I see people in very professional environments with face tattoos and stuff like that, and people don't blink twice anymore. I used to get questions all the time, right? Like, what's that about? Why'd you do that? And these days, no one blinks an eye. They don't even notice.
No, they don't, especially up here in the Seattle area.
Yeah, which is great. Like do you and celebrate it. And if you want to talk about it and share it, then that's awesome.
As long as I have a face tattoo that says F you, or like I hate all people,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it can get unhealthy in a way, right? Some of the body modification stuff, but I don't judge whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already talked about some, like can you go more detail, like why you started StrikeGraph?
Yeah.
Where you focus on right now? Where do you see the future of StrikeGraph?
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I just love what I do. I was talking with a friend recently that's another founder, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about doing another one. And I was like, aren't you tired yet? Because I'm in the middle of it. Some days I'm tired. And he goes, oh, it's what I know. And I think to that, like something that you're talented at and passionate at, I do feel like I have a talent for it. And so I really I like doing things that I can contribute back to and be successful at. So that's why I got interested. I wanted to do another startup. I wanted to do something different. There were lessons learned. So I wanted to do something that provided a lot of value for the customer, was ethical in a way, and was an economic return for investors and myself. So that's also what we're striving for here. Where do I see StrikeGraph growing? Well, right now we're in a heavy growth phase. We are adding lots of customers all the time, but we're also trying not to grow our costs. So we're trying to find that equilibrium point where we go from just being a VC company burning cash to profitable. And we're really tracking, what that looks like. That's a healthy company, and a healthy company is certainly more valuable to investors, but it's also more valuable to employees because it can be around longer. It's more resilient, to kind of crazy shifts in the market or valuations or stuff like that. So that's something we think about quite a bit. What we are going to do is we're going to continue to develop very innovative technology that is disrupting, this issue that I have with the lack of repeatable testing in security operations. So, when I send the data in for a test, I want the same exact results every single time. If the tests are not reliable, if the auditor grades the same data differently every time they see it, then that's not a valid assessment. And so I am like pushing, and StrikeGraph is pushing to say, hey, technology can test quantitatively with a repeatable outcome. So we can test the encryption settings on your servers over and over and over again and ensure that you're meeting that outcome or that standard. and take away the possibility for human error. Don't get me wrong, there's a place for humans in these testing processes in really reviewing the outcomes of the testing and providing feedback and opportunity for organizations to improve. But someone clicking through a spreadsheet row after row after row is not a healthy way to ensure that you have good security practices.
So for StrikeGraph, how do you do the decision, or what was the thought process for like going from like product market fit to growth, right?
Yeah.
I think I almost got to turn a switch on, right? How did you decide to do that?
Yeah. So, the phrase that I heard all the time is like, well, once you reach 1 million in recurring revenue, you've got product market fit. And of course, when we make these rules, there's always something that breaks it, right? And so I had this complaint a little bit where, especially when we saw some of our competitors in Silicon Valley, they blew out their valuation and raised a ton of money super early on because they got to 1 million in ARR really quickly. So did we. But I started looking around at what was happening. I was like, well, wait a second. I realized that we got 1 million in ARR, but I don't, I just, as someone that has built a lot of product, I don't feel like we've got this product nailed just yet. And so I started talking to people saying, what's happening in our marketplace is that it's easy to get problem market fit. There are so many people desperate to solve this problem because their next big contract relies on them getting through this security audit that they're willing to throw any amount of money at anything that looks like it's going to stick. And so you're getting a real false positive from some of these products in the marketplace that they're going to be the big winner when all they really have is problem market fit, not product market fit. So for us, the product market fit has been a transition. And I'll tell you when I really think it matters is after you've gotten through your first year of renewals. So if you sold a bunch of customers and they use that product for a year and you get up to the renewals and only 10% of them sign back on, you do not have product market fit, right? And so I think we are at the tail end of that in a way. I allowed it to spread out even as we scaled the business, because now we're driving at industry leading retention and expansion and in our particular marketplace compared to our competitors. And so that's what really counted to me. I think that's what you got to look for.
What advice you have for any brand new entrepreneurs just starting out?
Yeah.
Don't do it.
No. It's an adventure, right? I mean, a couple of things that I think are really important is that one thing that I tell folks, and this is a very pragmatic way to think about it, is that don't make investors your revenue stream. Too many people, and I'm a little frustrated that our market has thought about it this way. They don't think about like the amount of money they're earning from customers, because that's the true value wheel for everyone, investors included. They think about investors as a revenue stream, like, oh, I've raised so much money, we're successful. That's not the way it works, actually. That's not the definition of success. And so really focus on customer value, retention of customer, where they're at. Listen to that carefully. If you're paying attention to that, investors will want to invest. But balancing the valuation and the amount of investment you're taking on for the outcomes you want to go after with that investment is really important. That's the art, I think, of a lot of this work. The second thing is that I never got any business I ever built to grow bigger than it was meant to grow, like, period. I said to somebody recently, like, building a company is kind of like Jell-O in the Tupperware. It's just going to fill in the Tupperware,
Very true.
And so don't take it personally. The business you build might only be built to be so big that might be its appropriate size. That's the size of the market. That's the size of the opportunity. That's how much people are willing to pay for the value it provides. Some of those things you can't change. They just are. And it's good to be aware of them, but you're going to get surprised, as you go out there and learn things too. And so don't take it personally,
So follow-up question on that. Suppose someone's out there, they've been working their company maybe 2, 3, 4 years, right? And of course, people say, don't never give up, don't quit, keep on grinding. But when should someone say, okay, maybe this isn't working for me? Like, what kind of like signals do they say? Of course, you see the meme where the person is digging for diamonds and right before you're supposed to hit the diamond line, he walks away.
Yeah.
That's a big fear. But like when you should, okay, maybe I need to at least take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to like point out that like, that's like the way a gambler thinks, right? Like, oh, this is like this next thing is going to be my big win. It's going to come in until you're completely broken. You have nothing left. That's when you need to be careful, right? And so maybe, you know, how we started the conversation is important to think about. Where's your mental health at? Do you still have a passion for this project? You know, are you walking in happy and excited about what's going on? And look, there are all kinds of like interesting outcomes that I've seen of businesses over the years. You may find a buyer, you know, and it might be the right time for you to hand that company off to someone else. Roundbox, you know, my consulting business, we were pretty successful. You know, we'd grown a great business. I hadn't taken on any capital. I owned it completely. You know what the problem was is that our customers needed us to grow even more. And I couldn't afford the scale of the growth anymore. Like my house was out there on the balance sheet, and that's terrifying. And so I recognized that I had taken it as far as I could. And luckily we had a good buyer, and I found an M&A opportunity, and we handed it off to them to continue to grow. Yeah.
Nice. So, you know, you have a lot of stuff going on, CEO, other products you're working on selling. How do you do your schedule like every day? Like, do you have a block calendar event? Like, how do you make sure like you stay focused?
Yeah. So I don't know that I'm the best at this. My day tends to fill up with a lot of meetings, and I tend to keep it pretty open, because especially in a fully remote place, like this is my version of the open door policy, right? Like you can book I tell new employees that one of the things every onboarded employee does is that they set up a calendar event with me so that they know how to put time on my calendar so we can talk if they have something going on. However, we all try to be respectful. Like that business hour things has a flip side, right? Like outside of business hours, we try not to bug each other. You know, I've talked with a couple folks who are starting to build this habit where I'm like, even if I'm on the phone, let's say it's like 7 o'clock at night and I'm on the phone with somebody and we're like, okay, we need to prepare this communication for somebody else on the team. I'll say, okay, just make sure and schedule that email to go out in the morning, because we don't want to build this culture of where like you're getting emails all hours of the night and feeling like you have to respond right away. So I think that's part of what, you know, setting a good example. When we do that, maybe others will in our team will learn like, hey, this is not, even though I'm thinking about this tonight, this is not something to impact somebody else on the team with. I would say that I also have given myself some grace that these things ebb and flow. So there are times when things are incredibly busy, and I have been incredibly busy for the last 9 months. It's been a real hard push for some things that we're trying to do, but I've got to let it ebb. You know, there's got to come a time, and I, you know, I see kind of a milestone I'm trying to achieve here that we're working at. And after that, I need to find some time to like pull back a little bit and give myself some space. So giving yourself the grace to deal with that and lean in, you know, when you're excited about it and passionate about it, and then being able to pull back and say, okay, now I need to take care of myself is important too.
And is your company run on Seattle time?
Yeah, generally, we'll do a West Coast time. Some of our East Coast folks will, you know, get off at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, as opposed to, you know, 6 p.m. at night, and start a little earlier. But then we also try and flex with each other. But the bulk of all of our staff are kind of in the Pacific Northwest, and so, or West Coast. And so I think that we kind of naturally gravitate to that time zone. And every once in a while, we'll have somebody that like works remote for a little while from like Europe or something. And you know, maybe they want to go, you know, for a month out there and see things. They'll generally work during the rest of their team's time.
Yeah.
And that's just an ask we have for remote workers. Yeah.
And so you've already raised a seed round and an A round, correct?
That's right.
Are you any plans to start planning a B round raise, or that's down the road?
No, we will raise another round of capital. I'm not sure what we'll call it. It's funny. Like I was talking to a colleague the other day, and they're like, "Well, you can name a round whatever you want."
Yeah, the round 1, round 2,
right.
pre-seed, seed. It's like craziness. Like,
so I was like, "Well, back in the day, we used to like name all our servers after Tool albums. Can I do that?" Like, no. But we will. You know, we're a venture capital-backed company. We're fast growing, and that's what our investors would like us to do. That's what our board would like us to do. And so to keep that growth going, we will raise another round. Yeah.
And so with StarGraph, do you see like yourself being the CEO until the foreseeable future, or do you see yourself handing it off, start another company? Does it sound like you have the startup bug, so to speak?
I think for the foreseeable future, I'm really proud of what we built. I'm not burnt out. I still got a passion for it. I continue to feel like I'm the right person for the job. That's really important to me. But it's hard to look really far in the future. Am I the right guy to take StrikeGraph IPO? I'm not sure. I'm not a banker. I have never done it before, but I lean heavily on my board, and they have deep experience in taking companies all the way through that process. So if I felt confident and they felt confident, that's a big part of my confidence, then I'd be happy to, have that adventure in a way.
Now, do you have a board of advisors and a board of directors, or just one, or just board of directors?
Just the board of directors. Yeah. So, I only have so much time to manage large groups of people. And so I think our board of directors have been a great, group. Yeah.
And then how many people on your board, and how do you manage them? Right. That's another job you have, right?
Yeah.
You got to manage them.
Yeah. So our board is kind of small comparatively. And I like that. There's only 3 board members, myself, Hope from Madrona Venture Group, and Alex from Information Venture Partners. And so we've kept a fairly tight-knit board. If we raise another round, generally when you do that, 1 or 2 board members get attached to the business. And 5 is quite a bit, that's a lot of people to kind of manage.
Y'all meet once a quarter?
Yes, currently. Although when we first started the company, the board meetings were once a month. So we started
That's understandable. New company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of problems to work through. And also, that early investor, super early, like that seed stage investor, there's a lot for me to learn. And so we're checking in quite regularly. But beyond the board meetings, I have one-on-ones with my board members, once or twice a month on a regular basis, where we check in for 30 minutes about what's going on. So they're always in the loop and are aware of what's happening.
So being a CEO, all this kind of stuff, you're fundraising, you're about to fundraise your company. Do you still find the time to network?
Yeah. Actually, I just got off this CEO retreat for Rise of the Rest, and I met a lot of new people. For us, we're a B2B company that sells to mid-sized businesses, 50 employees to hundreds, if not thousands. And so me just getting out there and meeting folks is really valuable for lead gen and partnership opportunity. When I was young and I was really nervous about networking, right? When I first started my Roundbox, way back in the day, I was like, man, I'm going to have to go do this schwarmy thing at this cocktail event and hand out cards. It's just not me. I'm a programmer. But I think over time, and I do this a lot when I'm talking to young people that are just kicking off their career, the way I think about networking now is more like art. It's you need to meet people that you actually really like and connect well with and are kind of aligned from a morals perspective or a passion perspective. And you build that kind of piece by piece, brick by brick. It's not just the number of contacts in your LinkedIn. It's really meaningful engagements that matter. And so, yeah, I continue to network and grow that network. And that's really important.
Yes. So Justin, anything else I asked you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
I think we did a great job, but I want to think of something that would be fun to chat about. I might just go back, Jason, that I know your experience with the military had to teach you a lot about a lot of different people and a lot of different engagements. And the more and more I'm outside of the typical VC bubble, and I love Skagit Valley, where I'm at, very rural area, very rural economy, Atlanta and stuff like that. It's just that there's just such a vibrant set of humanity outside of these bubbles that we create. And I was down in San Francisco for a startup event last week. It just is it's funny because I think they have this perception that they're out there changing the world, but they're not really engaged with it. And that makes me sad in a way, because there's so much energy and passion going on, for sure. I love it. But there's just a big wide world out there of problems to solve. And sometimes we're too myopic about the next social media platform
or the next, last mile platform, or the next social media platform, the next dining out platform,
Yeah.
Like is tech really solving real problems?
Right. And I think from the days I was, writing basic code to today, I'm calling us all out, myself maybe sometimes as well. Like, was I really building something that helped people? We want to make money, but we also need to ask ourselves deeply, am I ethically doing the right thing? And I think that it's just an important question to ask ourselves as an industry, like, what are our ethics? What matters to us? And we don't ask it often enough.
Yeah, exactly. So can you give us, first, can you give us your social media or emails, whatever, so people can reach out to you?
Yeah. So certainly like strikegraph.com is a great place to learn about what we do. And right on the website, you can come and get a demo or learn about that. Social media wise, from a professional perspective, please, grab me on LinkedIn. And then you can search mastodon.social for Justin Beals, and I'm on there as well.
You probably don't know this, but how many people use Mastodon right now? Any idea?
I'm not sure the number, but I was reading like when Twitter was, well, as they are imploding, a lot of people were moving over to Mastodon, and they were growing quite quickly. And I think that's tapered off a little bit, like not quite as big. But every week I have a friend that's moved over, and all of a sudden I see them pop up and they're following me now on Mastodon. So far I've really, really liked it. It's been really good. And I guess what I like most of all is I don't feel like a bad person, by putting my information up there. Yeah,
that's that, right?
Yeah.
Like you put your stuff out there, try to be authentic, and then you get like blasted from all these trolls. And
yeah,
one thing I firmly believe in these social media platforms, like has to be a way where you can't be anonymous, right?
That's right.
You shouldn't be able to have to be like, bourbon 1, 2, 3, and like have your like Twitter fingers revenge, right? You should be if you say something about whatever, okay, Jason said this, right?
Right. We've had a long conversation actually about anonymous communications even inside our company. And is that comport with our values? And I have serious concerns that if you aren't carrying your reputation and the impact it can have along with what you say, then there's just an opportunity to say whatever you want, and sometimes just to piss people off, right? And it's not right. So I struggle with the purely anonymous communications for sure.
Justin, can you give us any advice on wisdom or anything you want to talk about?
Skate or die.
That's great advice. Justin, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Jason, thanks for holding a long form podcast. This is a great conversation. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day. Stop.